All right. Well, it's 2:08 in the morning on September 19th, and literally these three stories are still the headline on CNN. I had meant to talk about them earlier, but I just want to go through and show how all these stories are interrelated. They're even connected to a bunch of stuff that I have previously talked about. And I'm going to leave some links in the description. I have a playlist of a bunch of interrelated sports stories that I've been talking about that's super connected to this, especially in regards to all of the Nebraska coding and the Nebraska Cornhuskers. It might sound unbelievable, but all of the numbers that they've been doing in these sports leagues are popping up in these stories. These stories are literally all propaganda created by the Freemasons, the Zionist Jews, the people alike who literally control the government. They control the media. They control the sports leagues. They control the movie industry. They've programmed you to believe everything you've ever believed in your entire life. All of the stories in the media are like this. It's all propaganda for a certain agenda. This Minnesota one, and we don't know who was the people in these ones. This Minnesota one, though, it's got people all worried about ISIS in America and blah, blah, blah. Don't be worried. It is a fake story. The whole purpose is to get you to not want to go to the mall, not want to go out, be scared that ISIS is coming, want to go to war, want to do a lot of other things. And they know that people eat this up. They know the average person watches these videos, and it gets them crazy. So anyway, let's look at some of these stories by the numbers. So these two stories are definitely connected to the Boston bombing, and so is this one in a way. So in New Jersey, they find pipe bombs in the trash can at the Marines Semper 5K race or whatever, which just reminds you, let alone, of the Boston Marathon, people running and whatnot. And even in the article, they even bring that back up, that, the Boston bombing happened how many years ago, blah, blah, blah. And this one, this one was even in a trash can as well. And they even bring it up that later on that they found the pressure cooker that reminds you of the Boston bombing. And also, if you watch the original footage of the New York one, they interview this guy in the video, and look in the background here. Boston Mar, right? Or Boston, it probably says Boston Market, but they're just programming you to think about the Boston Marathon. And it was a complete tribute to the Boston Marathon. I'll show more stuff in a second, but let's start looking at some of the numbers in the story. So the New York one happened in the neighborhood of Chelsea. And if you write out Chelsea in gematria, it equals 53, just like Nebraska. A big number that I have been talking about a whole lot in regards to Nebraska and the Cornhuskers. Even in breaks down to 5, U breaks down to 3. I talked about the race car Herbie, and they killed Dean Jones, the actor on the movie Herbie the Love Bug. Herbie number 53. And if you watch the playlist in my description, I know it will take a long time. I'll leave my blog as well. But 53 has been a very popular number in a lot of recent news stories. Another thing that interests me in regards to Chelsea is just the other day we had a big story about this person right here, Chelsea Manning, or actually Bradley Manning, that is granted to become a woman now in prison. And it's just very interesting. In this story, and the same day the story came out, there was a whole bunch of 62 stuff going on. And the date of the Minnesota stabbing and the trash can bombs had a date numerology of 62. 9 plus 17 plus 20 plus 16 equals 72. If you write out 62, I'm sorry. If you write out Chelsea Manning, it equals 62 in gematria. That same day, we also got a story about this ship, this British naval ship that was found underwater called the HMS Terror. And this guy was the captain, John Sheridan, born in the year 62. His name in gematria equals 62. This ship actually fought in the battle where Francis Scott Key wrote the national anthem song, right? Francis Scott Key equals 62. The word Mason equals 62. Also on this day, we had Adam Jones. His full name equals 62, and he came out and said that baseball was a white man's sport. A lot of 62 going on in the news that day. So just interesting, all this stuff happens on a date numerology of 62. And I also want to point out there's been lots of stuff in regards to the royal family. Prince Charles's birthday. Prince Charles will become King Charles III if Queen Elizabeth dies. And a lot of stuff goes back to the death of Prince. Prince from Minnesota, hence the Minnesota mall stabbing, and a whole lot more, you know. Even tonight in the football game, the first touchdown was Aaron Rodgers to Jordy Nelson. Rodgers, Nelson, think about it. Prince, Rodgers, Nelson. The game was even a tribute to Prince. But anyway, these stories came out 62 days before Prince Charles's birthday. The word queen also equals 62 in Gematria. And it's interesting because I'm making this video right now on 9/19, a day that I have talked about a whole lot in regards to at least being symbolic. So we'll see what the story leads to later today. You know, hunting for answers. I'm wondering if we're going to find the answers today. It's kind of like the Boston bombing too, you know. It happened on April 15th, and then 4 days later, all the big stuff happened in Watertown. They found him in the boat and whatnot. So who knows? I'm just really anxious because I've just been talking about this day a lot. I did talk about it last year, and really nothing happened other than Pope Francis began his visit to the United States, which is a whole nother topic, or probably somehow interrelated. But just wanted to bring it up because there's been lots of royal coding. And if you remember, in the Premier League of soccer or football, the team Chelsea lost, and that's why Leicester City won, and Leicester City they had the King's Power on their jerseys and whatnot. I guarantee this happening in Chelsea, Manhattan, it has something symbolic to do with that. Also, maybe something to do with Chelsea Clinton and Hillary Clinton running. Think about New York and Hillary. But anyway, moving on. Chelsea, Manhattan equals 55 and 145 in Gematria, just like Chicago, Illinois. And, you know, Chicago's been a huge topic in what I've been talking about and all of these interrelated stories. We even had the death of the Kinsella guy who wrote Shoeless Joe Jackson, the inspiration for the movie Field of Dreams. And if you've been following me, I've been talking a lot about Kevin Costner and how he's been in the coding. You know, he's even in the movie Dances with Wolves. It's all about the Civil War. And Wolves leads back to Lupercalia and Teen Wolf that is super connected to the Nebraska Cornhuskers. It's too much to re-explain. So anyway, also in the background of this picture, it says 30 CUYD, I believe. If that's what it is, CUYD in Gematria equals 53 as well, just like Chelsea. And just interesting, they have that Boston Mar in the background. And like I said, in the article, they even bring back up the Boston Marathon, letting us know about the Boston Marathon. If you go from the Boston Marathon to the day that all of that happened, it's a span of 3 years, 5 months, and 3 days. Now that really sticks out. It's a lot like 35 and 53. Remember, Nebraska equals 35, 53. Nebraska also equals 71 the big way. And the 71st prime just so happens to be 353. So, I mean, I don't know if they're going to do anything in Nebraska or if Nebraska is just symbolic because of all of their numbers. The word Catholic also equals 35 and 71. Nebraska's super connected to a Moses and Civil War type theme. Think about it. Lincoln, Nebraska, Abraham Lincoln. Lincoln freed the slaves. Moses freed the slaves. Nebraska played their bowl game last year in Levi Stadium. Moses was in the tribe of Levi. Moses equals 71 like Nebraska. The 10 Commandments equals 71 like Nebraska. I've talked about this big law theme going on too with the death of Antonin Scalia in them videos. So please go back and watch that playlist before you think that I'm just some crazy person. There's so much information, it would take too long to re-explain. So anyway, September 17th is the day that it's the day that leaves 105 days in the year, also normally the 260th day of the year. The Boston bombing just so happens to be the mirror day, or the opposite. You know, it leaves 260 days in the year. It's also the 105th day of the year. And that's very, very important to these people because the word masonry equals 105, the word Zionism equals 105. Also, Dwayne Wade equals 105. He was super connected to the Nebraska coding. He went to his first Nebraska game last year with his wife, Gabrielle Union. You know, Lincoln, the Civil War, the Union, Gabrielle Union. It is super connected, but Dwayne Wade equals 105. Lincoln, Nebraska equals 150. If you write out 105, it equals 150. Also, Blood Moon. There's a whole lot of interesting 105s. Anyway, the big thing with Dwayne Wade going to Nebraska, he went on 9/5, the day that leaves 117 days in the year. He was even born on January 17th. The guy who died with Sam Foltz was the Michigan State player, Mike Sadler. And last year, Nebraska upset Michigan State on 11-7, the same day that LSU lost their first game to Alabama, the same weekend that Teddy Bridgewater got injured. Teddy Bridgewater got injured, knocked out against the Rams on 11-8, and then this year he gets knocked out against just before playing the Rams. And 11-8 just so happens to be Sam Bradford's birthday even, and then the Vikings pick up Sam Bradford. Anyway, it also connected back to the 1971 National Championship where Nebraska beat LSU. And, you know, Nebraska wins their first championship in the year 71. Nebraska equals 71. This year is Nebraska's 117th season, being called the Cornhuskers. And the reason I bring all that back up is because the Boston Marathon just so happened to be the 117th edition of the marathon that got bombed. Or, you know, fake bombed, but whatever, you get the picture. Another thing I found really interesting in regards to the Boston bombing day and whatnot, the Boston bombing day was also the anniversary of Abraham Lincoln being assassinated, the 148th anniversary, and, you know, September 17th, the day when we had all this stuff happen, the Red Sox played the Yankees, New York and Boston, a huge tribute to the Red Sox, but it was both of theirs 148th games of the season. And think about it, Trashcan, we had the two Trashcan bombs or whatever, Trashcan equals 84. The Red Sox got their 84th win, and the day of the Boston bombing, the Red Sox even beat Tampa Bay, and their record became 8-4. 84, a very special number to this country. Revolutionary War equals 84. George III equals 84. United States of America equals 84. Obama equals 84. In Jewish gematria, he was born on 8-4. And this score of 5-6 or 6-5 is just symbolic to Philadelphia. Think about the beginning of the nation and Philadelphia. Philadelphia is used a lot in the coding in regards to prophecy. You know, Philadelphia comes from the book of Revelation, and it's the book of prophecy. Philadelphia equals 65 in gematria. There's all kinds of 56 in regards to Philadelphia and big events in the United States. 56 signers on the Declaration of Independence. Literally, John Hancock was the first. He died age 56. The last guy to sign it who died was Charles Carroll III. He died 56 years later. ISIS equals 56. Paris, France equals 56. Osama bin Laden, Adolf Hitler, Saddam Hussein all equal 56. President equals 56. Black Lives Matter equals 56. Climate change equals 56. It's truly never ending. 56, a very, very important number to the nation's history. So, the Minnesota Mall attack, this one is where it gets interesting. So I'm sorry for rambling if you aren't following me. I think you'll be able to follow me from here on out. So this supposedly happened at St. Cloud, Minnesota, that equals 204 and 60 in gematria. If you read out Minnesota Mall attack, it equals 204 and also 60. The perpetrator, his name Dahir Adon, equals 60. Lincoln, Nebraska, equals 60. Tribe of Levi, equals 60. Abraham Lincoln, equals 60. Just lots of 60 stuff going on. Supposedly, if you look up Nebraska and the Civil War, they had 239 people die in the Civil War. 35 died in the war, and the other 204 died from disease. I mean, just think about it. Minnesota Mall Attack 204, St. Cloud, Minnesota 204, has all the connections to Lincoln, Nebraska that I've been talking about. Nebraska equals 35. 35 actually died from the war. I mean, ridiculous. 239, I also mentioned a whole lot in regards to even the roast of Rob Lowe. And that was on the day that leaves 117 days in the year, just like Nebraska going into their 117th season as the Huskers. All the stuff I talked about with Dwayne Wade, And Rob Lowe is the bad guy, or the bad brother, in Tommy Boy. Last year we were in the 239th year of the United States. And I talked about how a lot of it was connected to Nebraska. And if you watch the movie Tommy Boy, he says, it's not John Hancock, it's Herbie Hancock. And Nebraska's mascot is Herbie. In the opening scene of that movie, 1 minute, 12 seconds into the movie, he drops his American history book, and the only thing written on it is the number 239. And we were in the 239th year of the United States. And think about it, 1 minute and 12 into the movie, Sam Foltz, the Nebraska punter who died, equals 112. He died 1 month, 12 days before Nebraska's first game this year. All of these interrelated stories, Teddy Bridgewater equals 112. Peterson equals 112. Notice he just got hurt tonight. LSU going into their 112th season this year. Their coach Les Miles, he went into the season with 112 wins, and then they lost to Wisconsin. And in the wreck where Sam Foltz and Mike Sadler died, the LSU players survived. And that wreck happened in Wisconsin. Colin Kaepernick from Milwaukee. Dwayne Wade went to college in Milwaukee. He actually went to Marquette University, where Tommy Boy went to college. We even had Jerry Sandusky back in the news. The Penn State guy. And think about Tommy Boy set in Sandusky, Ohio. Just do yourself a favor and go to Yahoo or Google and type in Sandusky, Ohio, Masonic roads. Their whole town is set up by the Masonic compass and square. Literally every building, every monument, every place in the United States, and probably throughout the whole world, it's called what it's called because of the location that it's located. It's built to a certain height for a certain agenda for a certain reason. I mean, like the 77-foot tall Pentagon that got hit by the Flight 77 on the 77th meridian exactly 77 minutes after it took off. And the Twin Towers that were 110 stories tall, taken down by Osama bin Laden that equals 110. I mean, seriously, everything, it's planned by the numbers. It's been this way since the beginning. Anyway, in regards to 239, there's just so much symbolism going on with 239. Nebraska even lost the first game of the season, the one Dwayne Wade went to last year. They lost it to BYU on the Hail Mary. BYU, the Mormon school. And the Book of Mormon has 239 chapters. Pope Francis, his trip to the United States was all about the number 239 and 923. He came on his 923rd day as being the Pope. He went to the White House at 923 on 923. That can even be written as 23/9. And then he gave a big speech in Philadelphia using Abraham Lincoln's Gettysburg Address lectern. And I mean, he did that for a certain agenda. And most people just don't think about it. But just think about all these Civil War, the civil rights stuff that's been in the news, just being pounded ever since Obama's been in office. Anyway, some other interesting 204s that I had in my notes. Barack Obama killed by ISIS. Who knows if that's going to happen, but very interesting. That equals 204. Johnson Space Center equals 204. Talked a lot about Super Bowl 51 that's held in Houston, where Johnson Space Center is. Houston equals 112. Houston Astros equal 204. Herbert Clark Hoover equals 204. There's something big going on with Iowa as well. The guy who wrote Shoeless Joe Jackson, he even went to Iowa University. Literally, Willy Wonka or Gene Wilder went to Iowa University. Willy Wonka equals 145. Iowa Hawkeyes equals 145. Chicago, Illinois equals 145. A whole lot more in regards to that. But Iowa seems to be very significant. You know, Iowa's the 29th state. Herbert Hoover became the president in 1929, the only one from Iowa. Iowa even has Interstate 29 that goes through it. Kinnick Stadium, where the Hawkeyes play, opened up in 1929. But Herbert Hoover also was the president when the stock market crashed. A couple other 204s. Miracle on the Hudson equals 204. Thomas Jeffrey Hanks equals 204. Right? We just had the movie Sully that was all about this. Tom Hanks playing Sully. It's the Miracle on the Hudson. So just throwing them out there in case we start seeing 204, if anybody is following and trying to help me out, So the first thing I thought of when I saw St. Cloud, Minnesota, was this movie right here, Charlie St. Cloud. I think I've watched it one time a long time ago, but it has everything in it that I've been talking about. So Charlie, think about Prince Charles. Right after we had the Paris attacks last year, we had Charlie Sheen come out and say he has AIDS. Before that, we even had Charlie Hebdo, Charlie in the Chocolate Factory, Gene Wilder just died. If you watch a lot of my old videos, I talk about how every sports championship last year was connected to Prince Charles and the English Civil War. So, just very interesting. Charlie St. Cloud, then we get the stabbing at the St. Cloud Mall. And in this movie, his brother's name is Sam St. Cloud. Sam Foltz, Sam Houston. There's something very significant with the word Sam. The kid who plays Sam Houston, in real life, his name's even Charlie. If you write out Sam St. Cloud, it equals 127. Nebraska's in its 127th season, but only 117th being called the Huskers. If you write out Charlie St. Cloud, it equals 60 and 150, just like Lincoln, Nebraska. Just like the guy who supposedly did the stabbing. Just like Minnesota Mall attack. Just like St. Cloud, Minnesota. But how it all connects back to the Boston stuff, or the New Jersey and the New York stuff, and that's connected to the Boston bombing, the Boston Marathon bombing. In this book, Charlie's brother Sam dies on the way to watch the Red Sox play the New York Yankees in 1991. So how interesting is that? We get the stabbing on the same day that the Red Sox beat the Yankees. Notice even the time of the game, 105. Remember, masonry equals 105. September 17th leaves 105 days in the year. But what sticks out a lot in the book, it's the 1991, and literally, I've talked about 1991 a whole lot in regards to the death of the Big Lebowski and how there's a Ralph theme. The movie, he goes to Ralph's, the grocery store or whatever, and he signs the check on 9/11, 1991. It also stars John Goodman. John Goodman is King Ralph in the movie that came out in 1991. And in the 1991 World Series, Minnesota won. The Twins. In regards to 127 in the 1991 Super Bowl, the Bills lost to the Giants. And the Bills owner, Ralph Wilson, Whitney Houston sang the national anthem. I just made a video on Whitney Houston, the death of her daughter and her and Bobby Brown, all connected to Super Bowl 51. Also, in 1992, or the 1991 season, the Buffalo Bills lost to the Washington Redskins in the Super Bowl, but the Super Bowl was held in Minnesota. And in Super Bowl 52, that will be held in Minnesota. Crossroads Mall equals 52. The cop in the story, Jason Falconer, equals 52. Notice how in the CNN article they even highlight he's clearly a hero. Clearly a hero equals 60 and 123, identical to Abraham Lincoln. 60 fitting for the story. His name Falconer also reminds me of Philando Castile, who died in Falcon Heights, Minnesota. I talked a whole lot about how his death was super connected to some type of presidential assassination. Abraham Lincoln, think about him being assassinated. Anyway, Obama went to Omaha, Nebraska right after his State of the Union on January 13th. The very next day, he went and gave a speech in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, where we got the Alton Sterling hoax shooting the same day as the Philando Castile stuff. When Obama was in Baton Rouge, he gave a speech at McKinley High School, and Falcon Heights, Minnesota is where Teddy Roosevelt gave a famous speech for carrying the big stick. Teddy Roosevelt was the vice president of McKinley, so when McKinley was assassinated, just a few days after Teddy Roosevelt giving the speech, Teddy Roosevelt became the president. And think about that in regards to the Buffalo Bills. McKinley was shot in Buffalo at the World's Fair. If you go from 7/6 to the day of all this stuff happening, a span of 2 months, 11 days, which is interesting. Sam Foltz, born on 21/1, he died 211 days after his last game. If you write out Minnesota, Louisiana together, it equals 211 and 7/6. A lot like the day that the Philando Castile and the Alton Sterling stuff came out. Another interesting thing is it said that the police knew this attacker, and the story, it just seems really fishy to me. It's a town of almost 70,000 people, and the police knew him for only minor traffic violations. I mean, I live in a town of like 1,000 people, and I seriously don't know everybody. So I can't imagine a town of 70,000 people, and they know this guy because of minor traffic violations. That right there makes me think he was just working for the police, It's all just a big staged old event. If you go and watch the video on CNN, one of the guys being wheeled out in the stretcher even smiles at the camera and gives them a peace sign, and then they hurry up and pan the camera away like, oh crap, we didn't want him to do that. Or maybe they did, just so they could laugh at everybody who ate the story up, Anyway, police also equals 60, just fitting for the story, I'm telling you. A lot of 60 of the story. They even let us know that St. Cloud is about 65 miles away from Minneapolis and has a population of 67,000 people. Remember, Prince equals 65. He was born on 6/7. He died 67 days after Vanity. Alton Sterling equals 67. Philando Castile equals 67. The stories came out on 7/6 or 6/7. Blue Lives Matter equals 67. Blue Lives Matter passed in Louisiana on a date numerology of 67. Also, isn't it great how there was 9 people non-fatally injured and then the one death, which was the perpetrator, but 91 Vikings equal 91 in Gematria. A total tribute to the Vikings. Anyway, I went back and watched the Charlie St. Cloud movie, and this is the day that his brother died in the movie, June 12th, 2005. And in the movie, the Red Sox are playing the Yankees on the TV, and they leave in the 7th inning stretch. But in real life, if you go to that day, the Red Sox beat the Cubs 8-1 and got their 33rd win. And the Yankees lost to the Cardinals 3-5. And it's just interesting with this 8-1 score. Cardinals equals 81, Dodgers equals 81. Both of them most likely will make the playoffs this year and, possibly go up against the Cubs. Also, the Dodgers beat the Yankees in the 1981 World Series. So just interesting, the score of 8-1. I've been all about the Cubs all this year, but, who knows? Possibly the Dodgers are going to beat them, or possibly it's just a tribute to the Dodgers playing them in the championship. 2005 was also an interesting year because the Chicago White Sox won their first World Series in 88 seasons. I just talked about the curse of the Billy Goat with the Cubs. Interesting, it's just both Chicago teams. I've also mentioned a lot in regards to Chicago in the year 1919. And then that was the year of the Black Sox scandal with Shoeless Joe Jackson. And then we got the guy from Field of Dreams dying. Anyway, running out of time. It's all complete programming. They even use the movies and they super code it by numbers.